And of course, speaking of great films, I have a question for you. Were you a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout when you were a kid? Well, I was. I sold cookies and I earned tons of patches, but one thing I didn't do was save the world. But in a new film, that is exactly what 3 scouts are trying to do. Take a look. What would you do if out of nowhere your town was ravaged by a zombie invasion? Well, in a new film, 3 scouts and lifelong friends join forces with a cocktail waitress to become the world's most unlikely team of heroes when that very scenario happens in their peaceful town. We are joined this morning by the director of Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, Christopher Landon. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So actually, Chris, we know most of your work as a writer. You were a writer on Disturbia and also installments of Paranormal Activity. So I'm curious, how did you kind of make this transition over to directing?
You know, I think like all writers, we eventually want to try and take control of our own material. And I started, my first film was an indie, and I just got really lucky that someone was dumb enough to give me some money and to let me go make that movie. But this was just sort of a natural progression for me, and I was grateful that Paramount allowed me to jump into the director's chair here and let me go wild.
Well, I know we are so glad that they did. And in Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, you know, we're watching these 3 Boy Scouts. They think they're about to have, you know, the most amazing night of their life, but things turn around pretty quickly. So tell us more about this film.
So, Scout's Guide is about these 3 best friends that have grown up in Scouts together, and this is it's the eve of their last camp out because 2 of them are done with Scouts and they just kind of want to be normal guys and go to parties. But then their town is taken over by zombies, and so they have to use their scouting skills to try and save the day. And so it's a ridiculous, crazy, over-the-top scenario, but it's also the perfect way to sort of blend the horror and the comedy.
Well, and we're seeing some of the clips from it now, and I love that when we're talking about zombies, we're not just talking about people. We see some animals, we see some scary things happening, but one thing that I found really interesting is kind of this partnership that develops between them and a cocktail waitress who's pretty awesome. So tell us about that character.
Right, so our scouts encounter a Denise. She's a cocktail waitress at a strip club, and she ends up sort of being their sort of guide through the night and their protector. She's really tough, and she knows how to use a shotgun, and she also ends up being sort of like I always say that she's sort of like the Kelly LeBrock character from Weird Science, where she's actually helping our lead character Ben sort of come into his own and start to be a little more proactive. And so she's kind of like, she's our Yoda.
I love that. Well, the dynamic between her and the 3 kids is just, it's perfect. So I know I've seen the trailers. I'm super excited to actually watch the film now that it's out on HD, but I want to know, what was it about this project that kind of made you interested in being involved?
You know, when I read the script, you know, the first thing, it had a different title. It was called Scouts versus Zombies. And so when I got the script, I thought, you know, this is either going to be terrible or it's going to be just ridiculous and fun. And thankfully it was the latter. It was just the idea of this mashup, this concept of taking something like scouting, which is so kind of sweet and cute and very Americana, and then combining it with zombies, you know, which is obviously horrific and gory and violent. And so it was just on concept alone that I thought it was really fun. But for me, it was also an opportunity to make a movie that, you know, took me back to my childhood, because I grew up watching The Goonies and Gremlins and Monster Squad, and so I wanted this movie to sort of be my love letter to those movies. So it's very much an 80s kind of a throwback thing.
That's definitely the way I would put it, 80s throwback. And as a former Girl Scout, I have to say thank you, because I am so excited for this movie. It's going to be so much fun. And Chris, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak to my viewers this morning.
Thank you. That was fun.
And you can catch Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse on demand or digital HD. Now stay with us. We'll be back with more after this.